What's up everybody, this is Danny, and today I'll be doing a camera comparison between the Galaxy Z Fold 4 and the new Galaxy Z Fold 5. So today I'm in Seoul, South Korea, and I'm about to jump on a city tour bus just to see what's going on and explore the city a little bit. And I want to know if the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor can really help these cameras out, because it looks like they're the same cameras all around. So can the processing really help, and is it worth upgrading the camera? Let's see. During Unpack, I got to visit Samsung's R&D building, and this is where we got to see some of the concepts that were considered before finalizing this year's Flip and Fold. Some interesting aspect ratios that they were exploring, and this did give us a great idea of where Samsung is headed with this lineup. I took a few portrait mode photos to begin my testing, and immediately I can tell that there is more contrast on the new Z Fold 5 on the black shirt, and look at the amount of detail picked up on the new phone. That's a bigger difference than I expected. Here's a main sensor portrait shot just for reference, and this year there is a 2x portrait mode choice right in the camera app on the Z Fold 5. Not sure if this will make it to the Z Fold 4 later, but this is a great addition. And here is the 3x portrait mode, which has always been my favorite. You can see the difference in the detail in her shirt and hair, but both of them look really solid. I'll talk more about the main sensor in just a little bit, because to no surprise they do look very similar, but there are differences. In this indoor shot of the lobby area, I noticed two things. There is more texture picked up on the floor, so the changes in processing are noticeable on regular shots as well. And if you look at the back here, the dynamic range is processed better on the windows, so while it might be subtle, the improvements are welcome. This is an ultra wide shot from the same area, and this is a better example of the more textures being picked up on the floor. I don't even have to zoom in, you can see it immediately. Here is an ultra wide shot of the building outside, and at first look you might not notice a huge difference at all, but when you crop into the ground you can see the sharpness and detail difference, so this was a little surprising to me. Even in this shot of my breakfast that day, you can see the depth of field is remapped, where it's less aggressive in the background, and the highlights are better controlled, preserving more detail on the mandu or Korean dumpling, and the image all around remains sharper and in focus compared to the Z Fold 4 shot. I noticed while looking at the shots of exploring the city that day that these findings are consistent across the board. It's almost like this is a different sensor, the way it's keeping the image sharper from corner to corner. Take a look at here. When you punch in, you can clearly see the difference in processing here. Another ultra wide angle shot, you can see again the clearer details on the ground. Notice the edge sharpness here again on this sign. This view shot was taken at the same distance, but looks like the processing has been tuned to keep all of this in focus. And look back here, there's no sacrifice in depth of field to make this happen, so this is impressive. Again, not all shots will have big noticeable differences like this one of our drawing class that we had with the new S Pen Creator Edition and the huge Galaxy Tab S9 Ultra. But to be able to consistently notice a difference across this many photos is promising. Look at the wood here on the Z Fold 4. It seems to be cranking up the noise reduction to smear that detail. What surprised me was the high resolution photos at 50 megapixels. In this landscape shot, the difference is really hard to see. Even when you crop in heavily, you can see a slight improvement in noise, which is always welcome, with less sharpening, which is always the right way to go. But these next two are super noticeable. From far away, again, you can't really tell a huge difference, but then when you crop in heavily, take a look at the detail on the equipment here and the wood panels next to it. You can really see it when you zoom in even more, and look at the roof detail as well. This next one really blew me away. Some signs of the food that is being offered at this restaurant, but a closer look zoomed in. Look at the wood texture on the Galaxy Z Fold 5. This is a huge difference, and even at an insane 1000% scale crop, look at that detail. Unless Samsung somehow degraded the Z Fold 4 on that high resolution capture, the 50 megapixel mode is a clear win on the Z Fold 5. Two more categories before we move on to video. First, let's do a zoom test. First option is the 3x on both, and they do look similar. There is the 10x, and to be honest, the Z Fold 4 looks more accurate in color here on this one, and the mountain looks more detailed at this zoom level. But going into 30x, which is the maximum zoom, shows the Z Fold 5 doing better with less artifacting on the mountain side. And it's also slightly more detailed on the statue, so if you're a fan of zoom, you might see a slight improvement. Here is another example. This is the main lens, which almost looks identical. There is the 3x, which looks very similar as well. And again, at 10x, the Z Fold 4 is more color accurate, so it's not always a win for the new phone. When I was at the top of Namsan Seoul Tower, I absolutely had to do a full zoom test. The visibility wasn't the best that day, the smog was really hindering the view, and I had to keep it real. The Z Fold 4 did a better job of making that smog less noticeable. At 10x, I prefer the Z Fold 4 on this one. Again, the color is more accurate, but at 30x, there is more noise on the Z Fold 5, but letting more noise happen does pick up some more detail, but when it comes to the zoom, it all depends on the situation, so not a huge difference here. Where I did see a noticeable difference again is on the front-facing camera, both on natural mode for the tone, but the detail is noticeably better on the Z Fold 5. On portrait mode, the background blur on default is toned down, which I really appreciate, and look at my face, it is so much sharper, so that will be personal preference because I know everyone's a little different when it comes to selfies. I really like the way that the Z Fold 5 looks on the default settings on the front-facing camera portrait shots. The Z Fold 4 is brighter, so if you like that, you will prefer it. Of course, using the main camera for selfies is the best quality, but you can see that the Z Fold 4 tends to favor the red tones, where the Z Fold 5 seems to pick up and accentuate more of the warmer tones. In this one, the red tone of the Z Fold 4 looks more pleasant than the heavy yellow tone that picks up from the panoramic windows at the top of Seoul Tower. This is the ultra wide shot, so let me know which one that you think looks better in the comment section below. Here's a shot of me on the plane on the way home. I find that these pictures are challenging because of the lighting. They both look good, but the Galaxy Z Fold 5 is noticeably sharper and the highlights are better controlled. The ultra wide shot really shows the priority on the harsher highlights. The Z Fold 4 lets the highlights clip on my face but shows a lot more shadow detail, where the Z Fold 5 brings in more contrast, controls the exposure on my face, and creates a more dramatic shot while exposing the window better as well. I took so many more pictures, but I'm not sure if I need to show more to get my point across. I think overall you will get better images during the day with the new Galaxy Z Fold 5. While I don't think it's a must upgrade on the camera alone, the changes are definitely larger than I thought it would be. This shows the power of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. Don't get me wrong, there are situations where the Z Fold 4 takes better photos than the Z Fold 5. This is just the way it is every time. You will always find some. But overall, this is a better camera system. I'm so glad I got to go back to Gwangjang Market again to get these noodles. This kalguksu is worth the trip alone, along with the meat dumplings. I miss it already. When it comes to the video, the differences aren't as easy to see. If you're watching on a larger screen TV, you will notice that the Z Fold 5's video looks slightly softer in this scenario, but that is due to the processing backing off of the sharpening, and switching to the ultra wide, you can see the same, but the Z Fold 4 does look like it's picking up a little more detail, so it looks like some more tuning is needed on the video side of things. But I am glad to see the over sharpening being addressed by Samsung. If you pause right here on the video, take a look at the noise. It's controlled better on the Z Fold 5, and in this scenario, it's got better detail. And if you look at the view from the top of Seoul Tower, you can see that the Z Fold 5 adds a little more contrast to the video, making the scenario look more pleasant. And look at the trees here, you can see that the clarity is better on the new phone. For fun, I had to do a video zoom test because I know a lot of you wanted me to test this, and if you look at the court area here, you can see the difference, and the stabilization on the video seems to be more solid on the Z Fold 5 as well, being handheld. So these are the improvements that you can look forward to if you're thinking about upgrading from the Z Fold 4. Of course, this comparison wouldn't be complete without low light photos. This is from my last night in Seoul from the Myeongdong Market area. I'm happy to say that the improvements from the day are also brought over to the nighttime for the most part. The one thing that I did notice on the Z Fold 5 that it does allow more noise to be present for a slightly sharper image, and you can see that on this couple's clothing right here. There's a higher level of noise, and when you punch in on the sky, you do see the same but much better detail in the building here with more contrast, but the noise reduction is less aggressive. I will show you more examples of this later, but it depends on the scenario. In this one, the Z Fold 5's contrastier shot darkens the sky, so when you punch in, the noise is controlled better. It's going to be preference on what you like. This is the same night shot with night mode on, and the Z Fold 5 produces a more vibrant shot, and they both clean up nicely when it comes to noise with night mode enabled, so in this scenario, it's super close. When it comes to focus and detail away from the center of the photo, the Z Fold 5 does better just like it did during the day. Crop in here on the floor and you can clearly see the detail difference, so the improvements in processing are visible. Again, it's almost like it's not the same sensor dealing with the minimum focusing distance. By the way, this is the best fried chicken that I've ever had, and I would fly all the way back there just to eat this again. I took this shot while walking, and the Z Fold 5 did a better job with keeping things sharp in the entire frame. I did see an improvement here in the red replication, so that is always a major plus. You can see this on the Daiso sign. Again, I think if you're just sharing to social media, you aren't going to notice a ton of difference because the color and tone are basically identical here, but when you punch in, you can see the refinements. Look at the detail on the roof here, and it's a better photo overall. Now that I'm back home dealing with jet lag, I had to take a selfie. Look at the improvements in the skin tone and detail on my face. I did not expect that much difference on the front facing camera. Again, not every photo is going to be this drastic, but overall it's a more balanced selfie, so I'm glad to see there are actual improvements all around. The noise control is a big one, and you can see that on my daughter's face, and that touch of extra saturation brings the photo to life, but again, that is personal preference. You know how things go. There are times where the Z Fold 4 does do better. This wouldn't be a real camera comparison if these results didn't happen, but I think the front-facing camera has enough of an improvement through processing that you will notice a difference coming from the Z Fold 4. While I was here in a lower light environment, it does show that my results are verified from the shots in Korea. When you don't use night mode, there's more noise that is allowed, and the noise reduction is not as aggressive, but punching into the floor, you can see that the Z Fold 4 does keep up well, so again, it will depend on the scenario. When night mode is engaged though, I'm seeing a slight improvement in noise reduction. It isn't huge, but when you crop into the sky, you can see a smoother and more vibrant sky, so I would probably stick to the night mode. Analyzing the floor on this night mode shot, you can see that extra saturation and slight detail bump on the Galaxy Z Fold 5, but it's not drastic. I do like the fact again that Samsung is working on the over sharpening on the image processing. When you crop into this shot, there's quite a bit of improvement in the overall processing, so I'm super happy to see this. I think it all depends on the person that you are when it comes to photos. If you analyze your photos and care about the subtle details and improvements, and your smartphone is your primary camera, I think that you'll notice a difference coming from the Galaxy Z Fold 4. I personally think that most people will be just fine not upgrading to this camera, but the difference is much greater than I thought it would be, so let me know if you feel the same way. So let's go ahead and end it with video. I think the subtle improvements are showing here as well. Again, they look very similar. If you can't tell the difference, I don't blame you, but there is heavier contrast with the bump up in saturation on the Z Fold 5, and overall the video is more detailed with better highlight control. I can see it right away, but let me know if you can see a difference at all in the comment section below. Where I saw the biggest difference is in the 8K video. Ignore the choppiness of the Z Fold 4's video that is 8K 24 frames per second, where the Z Fold 5 is 8K 30 frames per second, so they will look different. But just look at the detail difference on the Z Fold 5's 8K video. Look at the pavement on the ground, it's literally night and day. And look at the background and the lights. The 8K video on the Z Fold 5 is fantastic, so if you want the highest resolution video at night, the Z Fold 5 is the way to go. The stabilization, even with 8K video, is so good. This is totally usable for everyday video. You just need the storage to match, so keep that in mind when you're buying. But yeah, that about wraps things up. I think there will be two camps after seeing this video. The first one will be, I can barely tell the difference. Why did this dude waste my time? Or it will be, wow, I did not expect that much of a difference just from processing. This is a major go. So let me know which camp that you're in. Thank you for watching. I hope this video helped you make a buying decision. And if it did, consider buying through the links provided in the description. You don't have to whatsoever, but it would be appreciated. Hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next one with the Z Flip 5.